This is a recording done January the 20th, 2019. It's titled Are You Trained or Educated with BGS Ibmor. Enjoy.
What is BGS?
Yeah.
How you doing, BGS? Damn, you just isn't time. I was gonna soon conclude, but no, you have to leave. I posed a question, and since you're older than me, you could probably give your own take on this. Because I'm dealing with an elder. I'm, up in their age. The title is called "Are You Trained or Educated?" And this question goes either for men and women. It's not really depicted by sex alone. But I said, from my point of view, that as a black man, a black man, he's always self-improving. Not all, but just enough, But compared to our female counterparts, once they reach a certain level, so-called level, they stay in that level, stagnant. Unless the environment has to oppose, otherwise, they will not come out that nest. So I'm not sure if you want to give your answer take to this question itself.
That's pretty much true. Yeah, basically, women conform. They conform to the environment. That's part of their biology. That's part of their training. So if they, that's the difference between a man and a woman. Boys and males, boys, men, they do things that make sense. So if you give boys directions, they're gonna question why should I do this? Does this make sense to me? And if it doesn't make sense, then they're gonna rebel or gonna reject it. Most of them. But women won't do that. They will actually take the instructions wholeheartedly and not question it. Women don't really question things like that. So if you tell a woman you go through this series of educations, get these certifications, you're gonna get this job, they will follow it, A, B, C, D on down the line. They won't even question it. Well, men will. So that's the difference between males and females.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And it goes back again about the actual educational system that we grew up under. And we look at even now, even when I left high school, pretty long time, and you left it longer than me, that it was a different feel back then as a man back then. Even now, one of the things that this teacher's trying to do is to try to conform more of the males. They even tried to create a curriculum right now. I think it was on social media. How they tried, actually it was on YouTube. There was a commercial on YouTube called some institution. It's like an advertisement. And it's how they try and create a certain curriculum to get the boys more online, up in levels in regards to reading, writing, and arithmetic, just like the girls. But this white woman missed the boat, saying, males learn differently from females. And how we learn is not going to be the same pace as a female because they take directions. Men question everything, even the boys question. Mm-hmm. But they don't talk about BGS.
No, they don't talk. Well, because what is since 1972, what was the model student? White female. Mm-hmm. So they basically, that is the model that they want all children to conform to. Not just black boys, but black females. They all want them to conform to the model of a white female, which is a little bit more passive. Aggressions. There's going to be aggression. It's going to be more verbal. It's not going to be physical. It'll be more verbal. Mm-hmm. And that is the model that they try to get kids to conform to. So using your words, talking about how you feel, using your feelings, how you feel about something rather than always logic or facts or something like that. Because most of the kids, especially most of the kids that were actually started school after 1980, it's more about feelings and less about facts.
Mm. Interesting. Mm-hmm. So I would say, let's say the children that were born in the 70s that were even in school during the 70s and then start out middle school and high school in the 80s. Mm-hmm. Now they start really watering down and saying, go more by feelings instead of the simple logic of things,
Mm-hmm.
So if you weren't born in a certain time frame where you had to still question certain things, then you're pretty much screwed as you get to adult age, born from the 80s down, most likely. To some, not all, but to some.
The bills were passed in 72, and they started the transition.
In 75.
No, when they started the transition. I started to see the transition in like 72, 73 because when I was, because I think I was in
Middle school.
Yeah, I was in middle school, but when I first started coming up, girls couldn't wear pants to school.
Oh, really?
No, they couldn't wear pants. And then in like the early 70s, they said, well, you can wear pants on a certain day for girls, Friday. And then after that, it'd be whatever you want to become more unisex. So there was a slow transition to making girls more like men and making men more like girls. So, but when I was, like I said, when I was in middle school and high school, you still had, they always pushed boys not only toward more logic-based stuff like math and science, but also trades. Like you had metal shop, you had wood shop, you had automotive, an auto shop that you had to take as a boy, as a trade. There was no home economics for boys or cooking classes for boys like there was for girls. Because the gender roles were still there. But in the 80s, they started pushing, they started switching up. In fact, there's literature that said they wanted to push more boys into home economics and nurturing classes and stuff like that. Because they wanted to blur the gender roles. And they started pushing more girls into, forcing more girls to go into trades, things like shop and auto class and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
So this is intentional because they wanted to soften the boys and harden the girls, give this one gender neutral medium.
Oh, that's crazy.
So to do that, they had to. So to do that, because in 1912, I think it was 1912, they noticed the Prussian school system was making boys, what they said back then, more feminine. Because they had the female teacher in front, right? So they changed the curriculum in 1912. There was more boy-centric, more shop classes, more physical education, more games, more PE. In other words, stuff that actually adhered to more boy nature. So basically, they shifted the education system more toward boys because the Prussian school system actually tamps down boys more, so they adjusted that. In 1972, they reversed all that.
It's a period of over. It's 1912 to 72.
Yeah.
We're looking at almost, my math is right.
70.
No.
It was 60 years. Yeah.
Yeah, actually 7 years because 1912 to 1972. That's 7 years.
Yeah. So anyway, this is. I mean, it's in the literature. I mean, I haven't presented it, but there was a huge, like 5 or 6 years, there was articles and papers and stuff like that talking about how the school system was feminizing boys and they needed to do something because the boys were coming out not being, men as, whatever the early 20th century men were supposed to be like. So they started adjusting the educational system. 72, they wanted to do it the opposite. So that's how come, over the last, 40 years, 40, 50 years, there has been this slow push to actually feminize the education system. So now it's to the point that sometimes, if it wasn't for the voice and the name, you couldn't really tell whether you're speaking to a male or a female. If you just took the text and what they're saying without the voice or the name, you couldn't really tell. You can't tell because I've done. Because like I said, I've had young men on my hangouts and heard them talking. I hear them talking. I heard them using female language instead of think, and I know it's I feel. I said women talk like that, and they have the same. If you ever had a girlfriend, there's a certain argument style that they use, which is deflecting, going in circles, trying to, change the subject, that kind of stuff. So, and there's a lot of argument style that a lot of young men use that women use. But that's what they've been taught. It's not something that that's naturally occurring. It's something that they've been taught. because the teachers and the mothers and stuff like that. This is the way we argue. This is the way we debate things. But that's
Yeah. And it's interesting because I noticed the boys that were coming up and they come and participate in these so-called hangouts or discussions that are not even 30 years old. I can tell from not only their way they talk, from their voice, but their thoughts and actions is the same from like a woman. And as a society, your society can't maintain the way it is if the males are conducting in that fashion, because other men are gonna look and challenge other men, and if the sense that you're a little moist, they don't really deal with you. Matter of fact, they probably draw a distance. But I know it's one thing, BG, since I'm talking about it, it's content that I tell you, and I did broadcast on this about real men don't entertain funny men, i.e. sexual feminized men, because we don't waste time with that. Because if you're not even acting in your nature, what you have in front of actual men, you serve no purpose. But women, they entertain all day, every day. Hell, they even defend the men that are in that direction. So it tells you that women, you are bullshit. You don't want no man. You actually want a man that you want to control. You prefer a man that's more feminine than anything else.
In the short term, yes, and that's what they find out. In the short term, yes, but in the long term, no, because when the decision has to, over time, that's going to wears on women, because women are looking to nest and looking for a man to lead. And if it's a constant negotiation, that what it wears both parties out, but actually wears on women. And so they may be together for 2, 3, maybe 5 years, and then they divorce. It happens a lot. So basically, in fact, the literature even says that they have done a better job at socializing men to a certain standard, and not as good a job as socializing women. So that's the rift that you're seeing.
Yeah.
And so, and basically, I get a lot of guys coming to my channel like that is because the way they've been taught, the way they've been socialized, when they get to be an adult out in the real world, they're having trouble. They're having trouble socializing with women, going on dates with women, that kind of stuff, because they've been socialized not to be aggressive, to be non-confrontational, to be supportive, to be emotional, that kind of stuff. And
feelings.
Yeah. So the white women call them soy men.
And BJ, it's like the mothers do this intentionally, because you'll raise your sons for the next one to want to deal with, but just to control. Hell, I want to tell you what's going to be really disrespectful. Say, ladies, stop lying to yourself. You just really want your sons. You really want to make your sons be your actual husbands. You know what I'm saying? Probably you are actually having intercourse with your sons. I'm seeing stories of this now. So this is where the generation of our race has now lead up to this sick degenerate culture, Western culture. It's creating more I like to say very much ill people, where even society doesn't want to deal with it. That's why I find that survive this type of sickness, they are turning a blind eye and going a different direction.
Yeah, I've been noticing over the last 30 years, the women are treating their children like objects instead of people, especially their boys. Because I saw back 30 years ago when they wanted, instead of them treating him, raising him like a boy, treating him like a boy, you see them dressing the little boy in bright girl colors. You see them having boys in ponytails or being pigtails. You see them not wanting to, not just cut the hair down, but also not even shape the hair. Because I had that problem with my daughter. Because all the women wanted his hair, women like hair, okay? Especially black women like hair.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
So you have a 4-year-old or a 3 or 4-year-old boy that has hair done like a little girl,
Oh wow.
and so so that kind of screws up his this kind of screwing with his gender identity. I mean, if you listen to feminists, there's no such thing as gender identity is wrong. Okay, it should be fluid, and they it's not. Gender identity is based on your biology. They didn't just come up with this stuff just because, okay, we're going to decide men are going to act like this and women are going to act like this. No, they've 100,000 years taught them, okay, this is the way men act. And we're going to give them an identity that fits their biology. And we're going to do the same thing for women. So these gender roles aren't just willy-nilly. They're actually based on what human beings actually do. And so when you start screwing with that, guess what you're going to get? It's what you have now.
And funny, somebody asked a question. Dave Tao asked, BGS Ibmor, is it possible to fix these men? That's one guy from Cameroon wrote a question.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, is it possible to fix these men? Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. Well, eventually they have to be fixed because men are very practical, okay? If what they're doing is not working, they're going to seek out something that does. I mean, there's going to be a few that's going to fall through the cracks, but most men are going to say, hey, I can't socialize with people. I can't, my life is not working the way it is. I can't get the women that I want. I can't get along with women or even other men. Okay, we got to find another model. That's like when we have stuff like Ibmor, MGTOW, MRA, all this kind of stuff, these pickup artists, all this kind of stuff. Well, men are actually gravitating to it because what they're doing is not working for them.
Indeed.
So basically what we're seeing now, this angst that we're seeing now is men trying to fix themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. And, it's going to come to a point that I always see just only a small percent of us going to really get it and fix it, but the majority of it's going to fall from the wayside, because at the end of the day, we got to follow nature at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's going to catch on. It doesn't have to be, everybody's not going to be enlightened, but the thing is, even if you don't actively say it or put it out, if these ideas kind of start to percolate, it's going to activate certain things inside people. A lot of guys are becoming more what they call red pill.
Mm-hmm.
Even guys that don't claim red pill, okay, you're going to see something that works or you're going to see something that feels right, you're going to go with it. And that's what's happening. The women actually bucking against it. That's coming. You have all these commercials about toxic masculinity and stuff like that, is because guys are getting off the plantation. They're leaving the farm. Said, okay, no, I don't want to be like this. This doesn't work for me.
And it's not supposed to work because at the end of the day, and I tell you this, you don't want to deal with the presence of a real man because he doesn't want to be reduced to a bitch. Mm-hmm. Me as a man, I don't want to refer to conduct something as a bitch. Just like you, BGS. And I tell ladies this, if you want to be around real men, I tell them, listen how they talk, see how they deal with logic, and how they do in their actions with the logic. You see, women don't understand that, we as men, we are doers. We have no choice because men have to do things, not only for our survival, but as men, because, we have to defend the environment. And if you've been around, and like most of these males that they complain they don't want to deal with all stuff, I tell women or ladies this, stop entertaining these type of males you don't want to deal with. Mm-hmm. I know you stop entertaining because it's easy. Because this environment makes you feel empowered. Mm-hmm. And the reason the environment does is because it allows you to feel like you're in control. Mm-hmm. But as time progresses, they're slowly taking the control out of your midst now. You're going to have to come back on your knees to this black man, whether you like it or not. And a lot of them don't want to see that. But it's coming. It's already here.
It's pretty much already here. But anybody looking at the data could have told you that at some point that the party was going to be over. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, they've been in the background they've been saying that for about 10 years. Okay, it's at some point the party's going to be over, and I guess I guess finally they're getting ready to call last call. I guess this is it. So a lot of people didn't believe it, but it is what it is. I mean, it wasn't rocket science. So I've been warning the ladies for the last 2 years. Hey, you got to get right. You can't keep doing silly stuff. You got to get your shit together before this stuff comes. But now it is what it is. So now they have to scramble and do it the hard way.
And you know how like most people act more when they have to be put against the wall. So scrambling is the next form of panic. Oh, I got okay. And I say, well, if someone has to push you in a direction that you've done for it, I tell people preparation is better than anything else. And like always, if women like to naturally nest, then they're going to be the most that's going to be hurt the worst than anything else. And the children are going to hurt this the most too. Mm-hmm. Because if you think about BGS, a lot of women that took on the side daddy, which is the government, the white daddy, the last 52 years. Come on, when I look back, I said they've been taking assistance back in the 60s. I remember Martin Luther King said it best when he was sitting on the panel. Somebody they were taking us back then in the mid 60s. So now you've been pampered for over almost half a century.
Yeah.
So now when they start take back and start cut back, you're fucked now. Because you had your children on this for the first generation. Then you have another second generation. So now you have almost 3 generations on this. Mm-hmm. And nothing is sure. You have not built nothing. You have not built the communities. The communities have been falling more as decades pass. Mm-hmm. So when they come in to say, now we're going to take back, they have the right and the means now do now because they stagnate our race. Mm-hmm. Heavily and participate in the stagnation.
Yeah.
Worse. And you don't want to take credit for that because you feel you can't do no wrong. And you teach some of our male sons that are adults that they can't do wrong. And see what's happened? Now we're sitting there pointing the blame on ourselves, but we're not looking at the role that you play. And you don't want to take no account for that, which is a problem to me.
Yeah, well, black women, black women in particular don't like taking accountability for whatever they've done, because it's too easy to blame it on black men and be believed. So, like Angry Man says, black men are sin eaters for black women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, the biggest punching bag on earth right now.
Biggest punching bag on earth, yeah.
That's us. I just don't like it. Let me read one more chat. BGS, what I see here in Europe, millennials chicks think being a single mom with an exotic baby is a woke of credential. I didn't know that.
Well, let's put it this way, okay? That is not new.
I know, and I noticed that.
It doesn't have to. That is not new. Having an exotic baby with good hair, so that all the other women can coo over it. That's been around for 100 years, man. That's not new. Mm-hmm. You just notice it because that's part of your peer group, but that's not new. Yeah. And where you think the idea of good hair and pretty eyes and that kind of stuff comes from? Back in 100 years ago, that exuded class. In other words, if you're closer to a mulatto or the mulatto class, which in the black class was the bourgeoisie or the upper class of black folks, that exuded class. So if you had a baby with light eyes and fine hair, as they call it, fine hair, and lighter skin, that baby would have certain advantages in America. So basically, that was a sign of a sign of pride to have a baby like that. So that's not new. So millennial women are just doing what their mothers have done for hundreds of years.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I remember you did a broadcast and you read certain articles. I think another dude named Mr. BJ, some X something, he talked about article on Ebony about back in the 40s or something when a lot of sisters were proud, eager when they were sworn with non-black men. Mm-hmm. And it took them seriously then. But when you mentioned, and even with the book, Children of the Slave, something,
daughters of the trade, yeah.
Yeah, and I might eventually try to buy that book down short. That this information, this is not something new now that I think about it. And I know a lot of black men were complaining and bringing us, but I tell you, say, you gotta bring some form of receipts. You know, we can't just we talk about now that we have some books like this, it makes it more solidify the point of what some were talking about. But like me, I don't really run off the mouth. I say, you gotta at least show some form of information. Document, you know what I'm saying? Because you mean we were not born during them eras. All we see is what we see now. But we didn't know anything past 100 years, much as 200 years or 300 years. All I've been hearing from a lot of women is that, you know, the dudes were just chucking it up for centuries, and is that the reason why we fell? I said that's one reason, but there's many other aspects, you know.
Okay, it's you're talking about why we failed. Okay, the thing is, what the narrative that we've been sold about us in slavery. Okay, like white folks just ran over there from America, you know, conquered a nation, just hauled a lot of people back. That's not true. Okay, especially from America. Okay. Basically, when they say the slave trade, that's what they mean. It was a slave trade. Okay. So the slaves over here, or the black folks that came over here to the Americas, were traded for goods. Okay. They weren't, you know, they might have been captured by somebody else, either a war or a debt that they owed or something like that. But the thing is, they were bought and sold long before they even got to the continent. And then, like I said, the Daughters of Trade said before before a black person, a person got onto the boat, that person might have been traded for 3 or 4 times before they even got to the boat. So it's like they were like property. It was like a chain of property. They might have been acquired someplace else, like in the middle of the continent, and then they go through a series of hands before they actually get to the final destination, even before they even get onto the boat. And the last time they get on the boat, they're even traded for, they're actually sold then. So those people actually traded for, and for the first 200 years, you really didn't have over, I think, you didn't even have over 400,000. Well, first 150 years, you didn't even have over 400,000 slaves, 400,000 black folks, period. And you had maybe, I think it was 200,000 slaves that were actually in America in 1780 or something like that, right before America actually wrote its first constitution. There was only like 200,000 or 300,000 slaves. Okay, what happened is that they started bringing over more female slaves to breed slaves. So the vast majority, I would say 90% of the descendants of slaves were actually bred here in America. They weren't brought over. They were bred here. So the population went from 400,000, and I think it was 1780. You got to look at the chart again. And so by the time of emancipation, 80 years later, you have 4.5 million. So you had a tenfold increase. The vast 90% of the descendants of slaves here were bred. They weren't brought here. They weren't transported from the continent. They were actually bred on slave farms. They actually breed slaves.
And BGS, you know, you mentioned that, and I remember there was a certain section on Claude Anderson's book about that around 1790 when they have to stop importing, and then they start going crazy and start breeding. Mm-hmm. And they never talk about it. The only time people really want to get a good picture, they had to watch a movie or a documentary called Goodbye Uncle Tom.
Oh yeah, Goodbye Uncle Tom by what's his name?
French director.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I watched it, I think more than once, and if you really want to know a real glimpse of how it was, that's probably the best depiction of what we went through. Yeah. And that didn't really wasn't really played much in America until the 90s. They hit that for 20 years. Mm-hmm. And the reason why, because if you look at the time what was going around America, I can see why they did that. Mm-hmm. You know, so people understand the information is out here. We just have to look for it. You know, this is not something. I mean, we could take up a book and read it, which most black people don't like to entertain. Yeah. I understand, but say you have to do simple little research. You know what I'm saying? If you can find some old books, read and get an understanding of my situation.
Female slaves were actually rewarded with their freedom if they had 10 or more babies. So if she had 10 to 12 babies, on her 10th baby or 12th baby, she was actually given her freedom.
I agree. I believe that.
Yeah.
Because remember, us as the race people, we could produce a lot of offspring, especially black women. Very, very fertile.
Very fertile, yeah.
That's why after the enslavement, they always had a glimpse of saying how much really black people they have bred for the last, let's say, 30, 40, or whatever, since they start the process. And I say 400 within over 4 decades. That scared them. Say if that means if they produce that within 40 years, imagine it's up long for a century. You've been over the population before they start. That's why, if you think about bees, that's why they start importing more of them from Europe in the 1800s.
Well, yeah. There's two reasons. One, because they had to expand territory. We've got to remember, in I think it was the Louisiana Purchase in 1812 or something like that.
Yes. Yep.
And then the Mexican-American War expanded it on the West Coast. So you had this vast territory that you had to populate. So that's one reason. They didn't want it populated by black folks because they've been overwhelmed. So they had to import displaced peasants from Europe. That's to come in and populate the land.
Yes, I agree. And another guy by S. Kirky said the African illegal immigrants, Pookies, are being kept men here in Hungary, I think it's Hungary. Number of biracial kids jump. I think Hungary. I think that's a country. Hungary.
In Hungary?
Yeah.
Okay.
Please.
Well, basically, you have to get your numbers up by any means necessary because if you below replacement, your population starts to die off. So a lot of that is to keep up their replacement numbers, so that the country doesn't die off. There's whole towns in countries like Spain and Italy and even parts of, well, not France so much, but Spain and Italy and a whole lot of other countries where whole towns are just dying off. I mean, there's nobody there.
And when the population start dying off, you see a lot of more savagery, maybe.
Not savagery. It's just, I mean, there's nobody there. I mean, the towns, the certain smaller towns just die off because there's no people. So it's not even savagery. It's just slow erosion of your country and your culture. As there's nobody to actually replace it, and eventually, other people will actually start to come in and fill that void. That's what normally happens. That's what Quigley says. If your population doesn't hold and starts to decline, at some point you're going to have a faster growing population coming in from place else to actually fill that void. Which is why a lot of countries want to. They don't mind. Not increasing their population, but they want to at least either hold their population or slow down the rate of decline, because that's what will happen. In other words, if you don't do anything about it in 80 years, you're going to have other people coming in taking your territory.
Oh yeah, and they want that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Always about power. My people back then, it's all about power. You know what I'm saying? And one of the key was always about control at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one I think there's one question one person put out. Dave Tao, BGS Ibmor, what big shift we are going to see in 2020?
In 2020 is not. We've already saw a shift, but in 2020, I think it's going to be more about challenges because we've already seen the shift. You've already seen the increase of technology. Okay. So it's not going to be a shift. It's going to be, you're going to have to make decisions. Okay. How much automation are you going to use? Where are you going to use it? How many people are you going to use to work? People that don't work, what are you going to do with them? A lot of things as far as technology, as far as reducing cost. You reduce cost, you're going to reduce people. In other words, all that stuff has to be handled. Because you have this, the shift is already there. Now we have the fallout from the shift. You had the same fallout in Scotland and in England back in the the early 19th century, the late 18th century, early 19th century, between 1790 and I would say 1830, because that's where all the Charles Dickens novels came out of, with the poorhouses and the orphans and stuff like that, because of a lot of those orphans, the parents lost their jobs or lost their livelihood. They couldn't take care of these kids, so they basically sent them to orphanages. So you had a lot of these displaced people because of the machines took their jobs and took their livelihood, and the shift had happened. And the thing is, now what do you do with the shift? So they had to adjust to it. So now the shift has already happened. Now we have to. 2020 is going to be an adjustment period. I don't think you're going to have another. Well, it's hard to say when you have another shift, but I don't think you're going to have another shift until like after 2025, maybe like 2029, when stuff accelerates so fast. Then you're going to have another adjustment period. But I think 2019, 2020 are going to be an adjustment period, because you're going to have self-driving cars. You're going to have drones. You're going to have a lot more robots. You're going to have a lot more artificial intelligence taking people's jobs. You're just going to have that, because capitalism is about making money and competing against other folks, and other folks are doing the same thing that you're doing, or doing stuff that you won't do. So you have a choice. Either you either fall in line or you're going to get behind. So I think that's what's going to happen in 2020. It's going to be it's a decision point.
And a lot of people, that's where it's going to be. You're going to fall or be left behind.
Left behind. Yeah, we're going through this. We're going through these decisions now with say the shutdown. Okay, that's part of it, but also food stamps, also Section 8. Are you going to allow people to be homeless? You're going to make the homes cheaper? You're going to do something with the banks? Nobody knows. You have to make some decisions.
Mm-hmm. A lot of cutbacks has been made. And we're not going to see the fully until after the shutdown. But as we see it right now, a lot of being made right now.
Yeah.
Even in the room with the box of foods and stuff, and a lot of people say box of foods. I say, well, that's an alternative than giving you $600 wherever you get from EBT, wherever the hell you get monthly. And it's funny when Valdez did a video on the live stream about it, and how one maker talking about said they get in 100 and something, and was it EBT or some stupid card? I say, hold on. Now damn well people know said that right there was a damn lie, and I know some people that are getting more than that. And someone said this is how much you're making, so it's good for the economy. You can't live off no $125 a month on food. Mm-hmm. That right there, see right there. Somebody called it out, but that.
Well, because it's a supplement. It's supplemental.
Mm-hmm.
Supplemental. It's not supposed to be something that you live off of. It's supposed to supplement your income as far as food. Just to come and call it a supplemental nutrition program.
All right. Let me read these other chats. As Kurt said, yeah, I'm at medical school here. African, Asians, and other parts of Europe come to Eastern Europe, cost the cheap of tuition. Medical school can be for, I think, 4,000 US to 17K. I think it means 40K. I don't think that's to say. That's one chat he said. Another thing he said, influence of China is truly global. Even here, it's all over the place. They are new white people, economic, colonizers. Yeah. And before you say anything, anybody else have any questions? Speak now. I'm gonna wait for the chat, but I'm not sure if you got what this man just said. Those are two things he put out.
Okay. Well, China is next up. Okay, it is what it is. China is next up. I said that actually 2017. I think it's a video called "The Pimp Announces the Game."
Mm-hmm.
It's all about Xi when he actually went to the World Economic Forum to lay out his programs for the next, I think next 5 or 6 years, which is Belt and Road, and a lot of the initiatives that he laid out at the World Economic Forum. So basically, he was announcing what his model for the world was going to be. Mm-hmm. So China is going to be everywhere because, in their estimation, they have taken over control of the global infrastructure.
the most industries, especially things that's being made, massive production. They control a whole bunch of that.
Yeah, the manufacturing for quite some time. The thing is now they're going to move into taking over the banking architecture instead of and moving away from the SWIFT system that we've been on, and World Bank and not the WTO but the World Bank and IMF. They actually have parallel agencies to actually handle that kind of stuff. So basically, they're slowly but surely taking over the reins of what the United States and the West has done over the past since after World War II. So they're basically taking over that. Yeah. So basically, that's what's going on. That's what you're seeing.
All right, and one last question, man. Said BGS Ibmor by David Tao. Name the top 5 skilled people we'll need for this global economy.
Oh man, okay.
That's a big one. I'm not sure if you want to answer this.
Okay, always actually programming, because you're going to have to write programs to actually coding for AIs, coding for robots, that kind of stuff. That's going to be important, obviously.
Cybersecurity.
So what?
Cybersecurity.
Well, cybersecurity is coding. So all that is coding, right? Coding. I would say growing food.
Mm-hmm. I know.
Learn how to grow food. Mechanical skills are always going to be necessary to fix things. Education in some shape, form, or fashion. Those are going to be important.
Digital education would be one of them. If they should make their education digital, because that's what everybody uses now.
Yeah, and basically education, you have to look at it not as a local thing, but also a global thing. Because I was talking to Dr. Johnson, and a lot of highly educated people, especially women, have lost their position. But the thing is, they lost their position because they're thinking locally instead of looking globally, where their education and their credentials actually matter. You won't make the same money that you made in the United States, but the thing is, what a growing country doesn't have the skills that you have, so you can actually make a decent life someplace else. But a lot of people don't look at that. Well, that's another thing. I think that's 4. And basically, the biggest thing is I would say being a hustler, an entrepreneur, because learning how to manipulate systems. Say if you're not an engineer or you're not a coder or something like that, or you're a jack of all trades, and say you need to set up a water system for your local community, okay? You have to know how to integrate systems. You have to know how to pull different systems from different products or different systems from different aspects and actually integrate it into a solution that actually works. That's really going to be the skill. How creative can you be? How can you take various items from different aspects of different systems and actually put them together to a solution that works? So that's really going to be the biggest thing. If you can be creative and do that, you're always going to have a job. You're always going to be able to make your own money.
Yeah. And another thing I would say, the education, and I tell most people that are skilled in math or all those type of educational formats, they follow like these other educators, doctors like Dr. Boyce Marcus or all these cats. These guys create a digital product, and that's global. You know what I'm saying? So I tell people many times, you're an educator, you know what I'm saying? You don't have to really leave the company at home. Just create a product that works and market. And the best way you market and the way how you market, everybody's gonna buy your product. It's that simple.
Sometimes you can stay at home, and sometimes you need to get on a boat or a plane and go someplace else. You have to be able to be flexible, especially in this global economy, man. You have to be flexible. And I heard a guy a long time ago, man, maybe like 10, 12 years ago, he said the sons and daughters of America may have to get on a boat and go someplace else to make their living.
Yeah, it's coming. It's coming.
It's coming.
As economics gets more hard, people are going to weigh the options. You know, you're gonna take the options to the fullest extent. You know, and even right now, most of our people now, if they're not traveling enough, they're going to be traveling now. You know, because you know they're gonna find life outside, maybe here in the West. But like I said, the world is a big place, so you gotta understand as best possible. You know what I'm saying? We can't leave our hoods and then think this is where it is what it is. I mean, the system is not going to allow it. It's going to push you in a direction you don't like.
Yeah, it's better. What is it I always say? I always quote that line from Margin Call. Be first, be smarter, or you cheat. And sometimes it's a whole lot. She said it's a hell of a lot better to be first. So if you have a skill and that skill is not recognized here, find some place where it is, and don't be afraid to get on a plane and get on a boat or whatever and travel there and find out. You know, a lot of people have made their fortune someplace else in what we call third world countries. They've made their fortune. So don't be afraid, you know.
Yes. All right. For all those that were on the chat room and those that watched today's broadcast, and I tell people catch the playback. You know, I will leave some links. Also, I'll probably leave BGS. I'm not sure if you in the chat room or anything like that, or in the comments. Leave your link so people can find your page.
Okay.
All right. As you were hearing, this was just a recording done January 20th, 2019, with the title "Are You Trained or Educated?" with BGS Ibmor. Thank you for listening.